The Lord of the Rings Return to Moria. The newest Tolkien game out there, but is it another failure or brilliant game you can play with your friends? Today we'll explore this together. If you ever played Valheim and loved it, there's a good chance you'll love Return to Moria as well. The two titles have a lot of similarities, but of course also some differences. But let's get started with this review. The story. The game takes place in the 4th Age of Middle-earth, so several years after the ending of The Lord of the Rings. Gimli now rules as Lord of the Glittering Caves, and have started to reclaim Moria. While many of the dwarves want to wait for the next Durin, Gimli believes it is time to reclaim the old realm of Khazad-dûm. Unlike most games these days, you don't have to sit and watch half an hour of backstory before you start playing, which I see as an advantage. As you explore Moria, you'll also discover more about Middle-earth and the story of the game, which to me is another advantage, that you don't get all the information at the start. There are plenty of mysteries to uncover. The first one you'll encounter is the doors of Durin being sealed from within with some kind of strange magic. This forces you on a journey through the long dark of Moria, walking in the footsteps of the Fellowship, searching for a way out through the East Gate. The basics. So what type of game is Return to Moria? As I mentioned, it has similarities to Valheim. You start the game by creating your own dwarf. You can have tattoos, pick a voice, and choose from which mountain range of Middle-earth you come from. While there is a lot of ways to design your own character, I would have loved even more options, but who knows, maybe that will come down the line. With your character, you can either join a world or create one yourself. Like Valheim, you can either play solo offline, host a world and play with your friends, or simply join somebody else's world. This allows you to continue the journey alone when your friends can't play, and vice versa. To me, that sort of flexibility is what makes a game like this interesting. The world is procedurally generated, like Minecraft and Valheim, which also means that each world will be different and feel unique. That being said, there are certain locations that will look exactly the same, including the starting area of course. While these locations look the same, I've noticed the loot and some rubble will be different, and their location on the overall map is not the same either. All this results in a labyrinth of tunnels, caves, holes, and mines to walk through while trying to find your way to the East Gate. So it is both a single-player game, but first and foremost, a co-op multiplayer game you should play with your friends. On PC you can play up to 8 players, while on PS5 it's limited to 4 players. Game mechanics. The game offers you a variety of mechanics most of us are very familiar with. You can craft all sorts of weapons, tools, and gear. You can get a better backpack to increase your inventory. You can build a base with walls, doors, beds, and a ton more. Certain things like forges, hearths, and so on will allow you to craft new items that will make it easier to survive in the mines. The game is really easy to get into, and I would say it's probably easy to get into even if this was the first game you ever played. If you ever are in need of tips and tricks, the game actually provides a ton of help as you progress through the story. While it does help you, it also encourages you to explore yourself and try out new mechanics as you go along. Something I discovered myself when I learned I could push with the shield or roll around. All that being said, it is very obvious where you can mine and where you cannot, which makes it different from many other survival games. Personally, I kinda like that, but I do understand if others feel differently. Combat system and sieges. Moria isn't exactly known for being peaceful, not even in the early 4th Age. Here you will discover hordes of goblins, trolls, wolves, orcs, giant rats, spiders, and many other creatures. The goblins and orcs will attack your base, so make sure to have a weapon ready and build some defenses. As you progress further into the world, you'll discover harder enemies and more of them. The combat system itself is rather simplistic, with basic attacks, charged attacks, blocking, and pushing with the shield. It's not really the focus of the game, but it does seem fitting with all the mechanics. So you should keep this in mind if you're mainly looking for a good hack and slash game. Return to Moria wouldn't exactly fit the bill, but nonetheless it is very entertaining and there's still a lot of combinations you can do during combat. The lore. Return to Moria is unlike most Tolkien games. As it is set in the 4th Age, this allows for a bit more room to explore grey areas we know little about. Like how the dwarves exactly reclaimed Moria in the 4th Age. We don't have a ton of details, but there is no indication Gimli was the one trying to do it. Still, it is an interesting idea that still respects the lore. The game itself is full of details from the lore, including stuff most casual fans wouldn't even know about, like plates and forks left by the Fellowship, a book written by Ori, runes left by Gandalf, finding the Forge of Narvi, or fighting goblin men from Isengard. The game offers a ton of lore references. I will do a full video diving further into the lore, and also discuss some of the non-canon stuff they have added. But first I have to complete the game, so expect a video whenever that happens. Co-op. The game is first and foremost meant to be played with friends. While it might not always be easy to find someone to play with, you can also play on your own. It's a bit more challenging, but I actually enjoyed that. As mentioned, you can play together with up to 8 friends on PC. This means you can all explore together, or split up where some scavenge for ores and others guard the base. This alone allows you to enjoy the game for hours, having fun with your friends. Bugs and lag. In terms of bugs and lag, I would say there are a few of them. I haven't experienced anything major myself. 2 of them might be a few lag spikes, as the world generates, or when you hit multiple enemies while fighting on a staircase. But overall, it's a nice and smooth experience, with little to no lag, and very few bugs. The developers even made a hotfix only a couple of days after the release, and I also know the first patch is meant to come out in November. You might need a fairly good gamer PC though, but my own is a little more than 3 years old, and I didn't have any issues while playing. I have heard some people complain about the UI and the fact you can't change the size of it, or simply hide it for a screenshot. While that may be true for now, it is something easily implemented, and it might come down the line when the developers have a chance to look at it. I did get a list of bugs from the developers that are known bugs they're currently trying to fix. This is something every game has, but it doesn't look like anything major, especially compared to other titles released in recent years. Controversies. While I enjoy Return to Moria, I can't help but think back how I had my doubts about the game. In fact, I've heard most Tolkien fans having some doubts about the game, and this has a lot to do with the Gollum game and the Rings of Power. The Rings of Power cared little for the lore and would constantly contradict what Tolkien actually wrote and show little to no respect for him. Return to Moria is quite the opposite. Not only do we get John Rhys Davies back to voice Gimli, but there are a ton of references to both The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and many of Tolkien's other works. Walking in Moria actually feels like it, and you feel like a dwarf alone in the dark, searching for hope and a way out. The Gollum game did try to incorporate a lot of lore, but also made a ton of stuff up, or changed it from the actual lore. On top of that, it simply wasn't a fun game. It was full of bugs, lag, pointless mechanics, and frustrating deaths that could even make me rage quit. Return to Moria, on the other hand, is a fun game that have managed to combine lore, mechanics, and story into a really nice experience. While I do recommend playing it with others, I enjoyed playing it solo on my own. The game haven't been boring a single moment yet, and it has a unique blend of exploration, crafting, building, and combat. I think it's a shame the game suffers because of other titles that have failed. So I really hope you will spread the word, recommend the game, and try it out yourself, of course. Another controversy is the fact you can play it only on Epic Games on PC. Most will prefer Steam, which I totally get. I have the exact same opinion. However, it does seem very unlikely the title will come out on Steam. So if you want to play the game, you'll have to bite the apple and use Epic Games. If you want to play it on PS5, you have to wait a little longer, as the release date have been postponed to December 5th. This might be frustrating to many, but I think it's better to postpone it a little, if that means they can fix some more bugs. The last thing I've heard people complain about are the diverse dwarves. For some, this has reminded them of the Rings of Power, and yes, it might not exactly be lore accurate, but I do think it's a nice feature for a game, so people can actually design their character exactly as they like. The game doesn't really force it into your face or anything, so I hope it's not something that actually holds you back from buying it. Is it fun to play? It can definitely feel lonely playing offline single player, but not as much as in other games like Valheim or Minecraft, at least not from my experience. While you may be walking alone in Moria, you are constantly struck by awe, by the amazing architecture and the world you uncover each step at a time. Of course, in time, all this might get boring, but for me at least, that's likely not going to happen anytime soon. Not only can you find underwater rivers, great pillars of stone, veins of mithril, or hordes of goblins, but you can also find special locations from the lore. On top of that, there are also runes left by Gandalf, when you search for Thrain, or you can rekindle the forge of Narvi to enter the mines of Moria. So if you love Tolkien and the lore of Middle-earth, you're likely not going to get bored either. The game is no doubt more fun to play with a friend or whole group of friends. It will make the game easier, no doubt, but I wouldn't call it an easy experience overall. And you can play single player. I do that myself. Conclusion. So what's my final score for Return to Moria? Granted, the gameplay, the mechanics, the graphics, the story, and the attention and dedication to lore, it's high for me. It actually feels like they care about Middle-earth and try to respect Tolkien while making a fun game. For all those reasons, I end on a 9.5 out of 10. I highly recommend you to try out the game yourself. It's not too expensive on Epic Games, which in my mind is just another bonus. Lastly, I want to hear your opinion about the game. Do you think it looks interesting? Did I change your opinion on the game? And have you played it yourself yet? Let me know down below. As always, thank you all for watching and farewell till next time.